shoes. Recorded live.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Travis and Blake's Drunken Horror Adventures. Blake's probably not drinking, but I am, and I am your host with the most, with my on-again, off-again, part-time, always here whenever we call him, co-host, Blake. What's up, man?
What's up? You know what? I really liked the last time. I have to say, the last time you had me on, you're like, this is our pal from Elm Street. I love that. That's beautiful.
I was like the mustachioed correspondent from Elm Street.
That's beautiful. Yes, and I am happy to be. I do want to apologize on air for the Eddie Van Halen fest last time. I just got a new guitar, and it's like getting a new drink for you for the first time. You want to be able to just explore it and have fun. So I apologize for that, gentlemen.
I enjoyed you playing the Nightmare theme. That was nice. Nightmare on Elm Street.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. But man, that's not even the topic of discussion tonight. Tonight we're talking about a classic, man, a classic.
Well, what's funny is this movie actually opens up, before we even get into anything, this movie actually opens up kind of like a Nightmare on Elm Street would, with a Edgar Allan Poe quote about, what, a dream within a dream?
Yeah, it's just, man, this movie, I didn't see this movie until I was a lot older, and my wife had never seen it before I bought it last year. She had seen the remake, and she did not like it. So I was like, okay, well, let's give the original a try,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm pretty sure I saw it as a kid. Now, of course, everybody tuning in might know what the hell we're talking about, but I would assume you do, considering what the name of the show is. But it's The Fog, 1980. I'm sure I saw it as a kid. Do I remember it? Hell no. So I go in, I see the remake from 2005 with an ex-wife, maybe? Ex-girlfriend? One or the other. Anyway, I see it, and I'm like, this is not very good. This is not very good. I'm like, I don't know what to think of this shit that I just watched. And I tried to, okay, so a lot of times when I'll see a movie with Vic, you can see him after the movie, especially if we see it at the theater, trying to convince himself that it was good, like the Poltergeist remake. I could see him in his head trying to convince himself that he liked it. And I would just, shut it down, usually. And I was that way about the Fog remake, where I was just trying to, find some way to like this damn movie in my head. But I knew at the end of the day, it was just not good. So at some point, I think after the All My Heroes Wear Masks guys, their podcast, which hasn't been in function for a year, we miss you fellas. Hopefully you come back eventually. They did the Fog rundown, and I was like, shit, I need to check this out. Tom Atkins is in it, Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh. You've got Nancy Loomis. You've got, Paul
Brooks, yeah.
Yeah.
Adrienne
Barbeau. Funny story about Adrienne Barbeau. I actually saw her live at, I want to say Actors Theater, on Broadway here in Louisville, Kentucky. She was in a play called Pippin, which I'm sure you've heard of Pippin. It's a musical. Obviously, I went for my wife, but I was watching it and I was like, is that Adrienne Barbeau? That is Adrienne Barbeau. So, yeah, she was in that play. It was kind of interesting to see her live on a Broadway production. But, I want to meet her at a convention sometime.
You know what? I do, too. And, man, I remember, the first thing I ever saw her in besides Creepshow was Swamp Thing. Another
me too.
Classic Wes Craven film. And then I got to realizing when I was, about 9 or 10, watching Batman the Animated Series, she was the voice of Catwoman.
No shit. I didn't even know that. I'll be goddamn. I learn something new every day.
Next time you watch an episode of Batman, the animated series, like Cat in the Claw or whatever episode features her, listen to her talk. And you automatically know, because Adrienne Barbeau has one of those distinctly identifiable signature voices that you can't mistake for anyone else,
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's one of these things where you've got this loaded 80s cast. And by the way, since you bring up Adrienne Barbeau and Swamp Thing, I always remember her tits. That's what I remember about it from being a
kid. It would not be Travis and Vic's Drunken Horror Adventures without that.
Look, we like tits, we like gore, and we like,
And the two are interchangeable. You could have one without the other, and both of you would still be okay. But if you put them both together, it's sensory overload. you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we love 80s so much. I mean, let's face it, we're 80 slashers type of guys because most of them have both. So, yeah, it's a wonderful thing. But, yeah.
It
anyway.
is until you sing into a woman's cleavage or you get drunk and sing about a woman's breasts on air, then it's not so much fun.
But I met her, and she was cool with it, and she loved me. So it's all good.
Okay. But to be fair, they were beautiful.
They were the best ever seen on film, probably. At least a horror film.
But I digress. Excuse me.
Blake's wasted. Again. Yeah. Go lay down. I'm getting harassed by dogs. All right. So anyway, funny thing, whenever All My Heroes Wear Masks did the show, they said IMDb gave it a 6.8. Still true. After, like 5 years since they've done it, IMDb has not changed. When they did Halloween, it did change by a point or two. It went down a little bit just because millennials are stupid. But the fog has not changed. So, interesting release.
It's one of those, man. It's just one of those classic films. It really is. I can't say anything to it except if you haven't seen it, you're missing out.
It is like one of those. It's almost out of time. You know what I mean? It doesn't even feel like an 80s movie, and we'll get into that. Like we talked about Alligator last week. That one belonged in the 60s. You know what I mean? It was a B movie, and it belonged in a certain type of time frame. But this is a movie out of time because the 80s were not about ghost stories. They were about slashers, mostly. So this one was different. And for John Carpenter, it was different, too. He wanted to do an old-school ghost story. Him and Deborah Hill, they get together again after Halloween, and they say, let's do this. And an interesting story comes about. So this movie came out, again, it gets 6.8 on IMDb. It came out February 8th, 1980, so 2 years and a week before I was born. Vic was not quite born yet either, so it was about 2 months before that fellow was born. We're old on this show. Sorry, everybody, if you're listening in and you're in the 20s and I'm offending you with millennial comments, but, we're going to offend you one way or another. That might as well be it, and we'll just keep going. So, what do you think about the release? I always like talking about this on certain types of movies. February 8th, 1980. This is a movie that takes place in April. Why not release it in April? You know what I mean? Like, what benefit is there to have February 8th? I'm sure there's something to it. But like as a release, as a distribution company, why not just do it in April?
I don't know. I guess because they were thinking to release something along the lines of Valentine's Day, because at that point there hadn't been anything released in the Valentine's month as far as mainstream horror was concerned, to my knowledge.
That's a good
as far
point.
as
yeah.
And it was, that says a lot about it. They knew it was good, so they were willing to risk it and release it, which happened, 16 years later with Scream, which came out, in the December month, which was definitely not a time for horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that was during Christmas.
It just, you said it was released February the 8th. You know what's funny about that is one of our favorite special effects men, Rob Bottin, handled the effects on here. Well, he had an assistant working for him on this movie whose birthday was the day prior, and that man is Steve Johnson. And I just think that's hilarious that film was released the day after Steve Johnson turned 20.
Well, question for you. Bottin did not originally, and this is from my understanding, Bottin was not originally involved in the movie. And then later on when they did reshoots, and we'll get into this, he came in later because they cut the movie and they said, oh, this movie's fucking boring. You know what I mean? We need to add some stuff. And I think that's when he got involved, didn't he?
He was involved for quite a lot of it, man, because this was one of his earlier, one of his earlier films. But yeah, Dick Albane was involved, and he was sort of a veteran. He did a lot of the stuff on the early Three Stooges stuff, and he joined the cast of the crew of Nightmare on Elm Street 2 with Jack Shoulder on the bus blowout. So he was kind of this old school traditional effects guy. And then you had Rob Bottin, who did the effects for Blake, which I think is funny that Blake and I share our names. We share a name because, I'm sort of a nice guy and he was a fucking monster, and And Dean Cundy actually did some effects for this. You'll recognize his name because he is like a cinematographer.
He did Halloween also. Yeah. He was
but
always
he did
John
some
Carpenter's
effects
staple
in this movie, which was weird that they kind of interchanged like that. But so there were a lot of special effects people.
Botine was playing a lot of and we'll get into this, but he was playing some of the ghosts or lepers in this movie too. Cause,
that's true, yeah.
Yeah, Botine met with Carpenter. He told Carpenter he wanted to be involved with the movie, and Carpenter says, stand up, and Botine thought, Carpenter was going to tell him no thanks, but, when he told him stand up, and Carpenter looked at him, realized he was a big dude, and thought, okay, well, you're going to be good for this then. So a lot of little horror touches in this. So many horror icons involved with this movie, let's be honest. I mean, it's one of those, I feel like it's more of a cult classic, and again, we'll get into this at the end. I guess we'll jump into the movie at some point, but yeah, 6.8 on IMDb, 1980 it comes out, right at the early stages of 1980, budget of about $1 million, brought in $21,378,000, so it was a success, not as big as Halloween, obviously, but a Carpenter success. He's had a few failures out there. They Live was not a big success, unfortunately, at the time.
Such a great film, though. Such a great film.
Yep. So let's start this thing off like we usually do. Like I said, you get that Edgar Allan Poe quote about a dream within a dream, and this movie's, and you can see this pretty quick, that it's set in Northern California. And right off the bat, Blake, I'm noticing in this movie how it is, even though it's like 2 years after Halloween, it is head and shoulders, the cinematography, where it's shot and everything like that, so much better. Because, in Halloween, they were trying to make it look like Illinois while it was California. And this one, you could tell it was actually Northern California, I thought.
Oh, yeah. And that's funny that you say about shooting. California is a big time location for lots of films, but it seems like in the horror industry, the California doubles a lot as the suburban Midwest, because in Nightmare on Elm Street, those films are supposed to take place in Ohio, but they are all shot in California. So it's funny that they used and were successfully able to make you believe, with a couple of exceptions from Nightmare 1 where you see the palm trees. Obviously, that's not a Midwest thing. But
you mean Halloween 1?
Uh-huh.
You said Nightmare 1.
No, I mean Nightmare on Elm Street 1. There is a scene where they're out on the bridge and they're reading the manual about the booby traps, her and Nancy and Heather and Johnny Depp, and there's a shot of palm trees there.
Ah, okay.
So
I think
you're like, yeah.
Yeah, because you saw some shit like that in Halloween also. I just figured.
Yeah, but luckily so much of that was shot at night. So there were a few things that were during the day, but I think that was probably also intentional for a lot of the shooting to be at night. They wouldn't have to use, I forget what they call it, some type of skin that they would put over a tree to make it look like a deciduous or different kind of tree, because Mick Strawn is the one that told me they used that on Nightmare 4 to cover up a palm tree. They used the skin. I forget what the term for it was, but it's a really cool effect to make a tree look like a Midwestern tree instead of a more California type tree. So, but I think that was a conscious choice on their part to shoot a lot of that at night, and that's something else that shares in common with The Fog. A lot of The Fog was shot at night.
Oh yeah, I mean, and both of those movies relied heavily on atmosphere, and by having it at night, that created the atmosphere. So, this movie, like I said, takes place. This was a Carpenter kind of thing early on. I know he didn't direct Halloween 3, but he had a lot of these Northern California towns, like in Halloween 3 with Santa Mira. This one is called Antonio Bay. It's a town that's about to celebrate its centennial, not bicentennial, centennial, on April 21st, 1980. So, hey, we're, as of this recording, 4 days away from that date. Not 1980, but April 21st. And then, you've got this, I don't know what she is. It's led by Kathy Williams, the character, and she's played by Janet Leigh. What is she, like a town's? She's like the mayor in freaking Nightmare Before Christmas is what she is. Yeah, she's a town official, and I think it's funny. She herself has a history for any horror lovers and horror fans out there in the horror industry. For the fans of horror films, she was one of the more
modern day screen